workshop, and we will convene the workshop. So I will let you take it away from that point. I think, is it going to be you guys presenting or? Okay. John, it's you.
All right. Thanks for having me. Once again, I'm John Bosket with DKS Associates, and I'm a lead of the consultant team that's helping the city with the transportation system plan update. And let's see if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So what I wanted to try to cover here during this briefing was give you an update on where we are in the process, which includes just kind of a reminder of what we did with the goals and objectives, which is part of the conversation we had last time I was here. Then also give you an update on what has been done and what is right in front of us as far as community outreach goes. So you know what to expect, but also we certainly want to get your feedback on that as well. If there's other kind of community groups, community members, ways of reaching out you want us to use, definitely now is the time to get that input. And then kind of a high level overview of kind of our biggest work product that's out right now, which is going to be most of the topic of discussion when we do all this outreach. And that is kind of our assessment of what we call existing conditions, but it's kind of how is the transportation system kind of working or not working now? What do you want us to fix? And then we did a projection with future growth through the next 20 years and, you know, kind of have a snapshot of what we think might really change with 20 more years of growth.
John, just FYI, my computer crashed and it's restarting.
All right,
So we're 30% there.
okay.
So I'll let you know.
I'll talk slow. So I could go from memory, but this next slide really needs a graphic. How about this? I can put you on the spot, Alan. On the next slide, part of it was going to be giving an update on the community outreach, what you've done and what's ahead. If you want to go ahead and take that now.
Great. Yeah, I can do that. My notes. Okay, so yeah, I'll just talk a little bit about the recent, ongoing, and upcoming community outreach that the city's been doing. So there's a TSP project webpage, and that's updated regularly. And that's at cityofestacada.org /TSP. I don't know if you guys have seen it. And that was recently updated with a form where people can submit comments and photos about transportation issues they have. We're also sending about 40 to 50 emails out to subscribers monthly. That's something that Mara is handling right now. So we have weekly social media posts over Facebook and Instagram. That's for updates, communicating project goals. See, we just held on Friday a youth engagement activity with a local organization, Ant Farm, over on Zobrist. And at that, we heard young people's transportation experiences, concerns, and got some specific feedback from them. We had one DEI committee meeting. I'm sorry. As of today, we had two. There was a DEI committee meeting just this afternoon about the TSP update. We've had one council briefing so far. Tonight is the second. Let's see what else. Staff will be conducting stakeholder interviews over the next few weeks to better understand existing problems and concerns. And we have a preliminary list of stakeholders to interview, but we also want to hear from council if there are any other stakeholders that we might want to interview, and let us know who those people might be. Let's see, coming up at the end of this month on October 25th from 5:30 to 7, right here in City Hall, we have a community workshop. It's an open house format, be a brief presentation around 6 o'clock to give an overview of the TSP project. Participants can give feedback either as written comments or through the engagement activities that we'll have set up in chambers. There's also an online version of the workshop opening that same day. That's open for 2 weeks. Same materials will be available, and there'll be an ability to share feedback and post comments. There will also be live streaming of that workshop on the 25th for people who can't make the meeting in person, and that recording will be posted on the city's YouTube account. The new Traffic and Public Safety Committee meeting, the first ever one, will be on October 25th as well, and that'll be right before or after the community workshop. And yeah, we will also be engaging with that committee for input and feedback about this project throughout the process. And let's see, finally is the What's Up Estacada events. The next one's on November 15th in the morning, 7:30 to 9 o'clock right here in City Hall. And as council knows, but I'll just say for the record, it's a quarterly informal event that the Community Development Department started hosting just this year to allow members of the public to visit with city and other agency staff, elected officials, and committee members, partner organizations, and local nonprofits. And this is just another place that we'll be sharing updates about the TSP project and asking for input. And let's see, let me get this going again.
Just a quick question for you, Alan, here.
Sure.
Have we taken or talked to the paper to get anything in the newspaper to identify that we're either having these events or just basically working on and asking for feedback?
That would be probably something Mara could answer, or Taylor, if Taylor's on the call.
Yes, yeah, I apologize. That should have been added to that list, and Mara would know exactly when this is going to be published, but she did just this last week send a press release to the paper, so that'll be coming out.
Great. Thank you.
Also, I apologize for my frog voice. I could share the PowerPoint presentation, Alan, if your computer is doing funky things, so just let me know.
Oh, okay. Yeah, why don't you just, I mean, if it's easier for you to do that, yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, 1 second.
Joel, you got something else?
One more question, yeah. Have we thought about maybe putting like a information table or something one day out in front of like the store, or a couple times in front of the store out here by the doors? Like a Thriftway, put a table out there with some information or something, because there's people that obviously don't get online and may not read the paper. There's a pretty good group out there that does that. Usually are more of our elderly community. And so just something that, they do go shopping locally. So it might be something they can see right there as they're walking, get some information, or maybe have somebody there to answer questions, take surveys there. Just something to reach that last little bit of people that we may not be reaching. Just an idea.
Thank you. Okay, it's coming up.
Here we go.
All right.
I think slide 3 should be where we're at. There we go. So one quick note on the project status also. From the last time I was here, we talked about the goals and objectives, which will kind of guide our project. And we incorporated the comments that you gave us last time. That new version is on the project website at Estacada. I can't remember the .org/TSP, I think it is.
Yeah, that's it.
So you can find it there. Again, there's just a few edits that we made. So it was a fairly easy lift. And then one quick note on the community outreach also, we do have on our kind of to-do list to connect with the Traffic and Public Safety Committee. My understanding is I think they convened the first time on October 25th, which oddly is the same day we're having our community workshop. So that's on our list to do. So where we're at in our process, here I've kind of got the circled in red there. We're at the end of that first kind of stage, the understand stage, where we're kind of wrapping up our understanding of kind of what's working and what's not. A lot of, obviously what's in this memorandum we did, it's kind of more of an engineering investigation. We're looking at your transportation system, maybe whatever data and information get our hands on. Pulled in some of the input we got from our stakeholder group, but really what we're trying to do now with the last meeting we just had with our stakeholder group on the 29th of September, the meeting we had today with the DEI committee, this meeting, and of course the workshop and all of the outreach that goes with that is complete that picture. Because there's a lot of things we're not going to get from that, more engineering investigation that we need to get from the community. And that'll kind of create that, basis, for us to know what do we really need to start targeting as we move into that next stage of developing some solutions. So the next time we'll have our next outreach session, it'll be in the winter, and that's when we'll bring forward some ideas to address the issues that we saw. So it would be another stakeholder group meeting, another meeting with the DEI committee, another workshop with a lot of the similar kind of outreach we're doing in this phase. But we don't at least have planned another city council briefing until later in the process, although I'm sure staff can give you an update anytime. Go ahead and move on if you would. Guess I'm pointing at Taylor, right? All right, any questions on the process and where we're at on the schedule before I move on? Okay. So kind of the highlights on that latest big technical memorandum, our assessment of the needs. Again, this is existing conditions, and then it's kind of what we call a no build condition in the future. So we account for a lot of that future growth and say, what's going to change if you don't make any more investments in the transportation system? Not a lot on solutions yet. That's the next phase. Next slide. So kind of breaking this down into walking, biking, transit, driving modes as we look at it. Again, just a reminder on walking and biking, a fair amount of work was done a few years ago with the city's active transportation plan. So we're largely drawing from that. Kind of the key things that were coming out was just kind of inconsistent availability and condition of sidewalks. You definitely see patterns where in older areas of the city, there might not be sidewalks or it's in bad condition, or maybe it's just built to an old standard that's not ADA compliant anymore. Newer areas of the city, obviously new design standards, they're getting more complete sidewalks. Also, there aren't a lot of what we call enhanced crossings. So those can come in a lot of forms, whether it's the flashing beacons or a crosswalk with curb extensions. And that was something that definitely through the meetings we're picking up. There's interest in some strategic locations and doing more of those. The highway, obviously, if you're walking, can be a barrier. Not only there's some residents on the south side, but there's a lot of recreational opportunity. And really only one way that's, quote unquote, protected to get there, being the signal on Broadway. As I mentioned before, while there may be a lot of ADA ramps, a lot of them aren't up to the current standards. And some sidewalk conditions can be difficult for people with mobility devices. And as we'll talk about later, a lot of this future growth that's coming that you've already seen through development review applications, a lot of it's happening to the north and to the east where a lot of the vacant land is. It's going to keep moving away from kind of the centroid of where all the people might want to walk and bike to, being the library, the schools, the downtown, recreational opportunities, so that the distance is getting a little bit longer. So something for us to consider as we're trying to connect them down to these things. Next slide. So we discussed with the groups that we met with, just kind of preliminary discussions about types of solutions. Kind of some obvious things probably for walking, again, sidewalk infill and repair, better crossing treatments, things of that nature. Definitely making sure we're providing connectivity to new growth areas as well. And a lot of these relate to biking as well, but again, working with the Parks Department, because we know that they want to develop a trail system through the city. So that would certainly benefit, day-to-day trips as well as recreational. So that's something we want to talk with them as we go through this process. Next slide. On biking conditions, you're probably aware there aren't a lot of separate bike facilities in Estacada. You've got bike lanes on the highway. There's a little bike lanes that are actually not shown in that graphic, but they're on Wade Street over by the library. But other than that, if you're riding a bike, you're probably just sharing the road with cars, which may be okay in some conditions, but for a lot of people, that's not very comfortable. Or maybe parents don't want their kids doing that. And then we mentioned before, the highway is a barrier for getting to recreation. There's kind of really only that signal at Broadway to help you get across. In addition to just the presence of kind of comfortable separated facilities for biking, you've got pretty hilly topography. So for some people, that could be another barrier that might make biking kind of unattractive. And then some people noted conversations we're having that considering that we might not have enough bike parking in town. So as part of the process, we'll look at your development code standards and just kind of see if your requirements for bike parking for new development are where you want them. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So again, we talked about a range of solutions. Again, the separated paths and trails, right? Partnering with the Parks Department, providing some bikeways where people are more separated from cars to make it more kind of safe and comfortable to do that. Or even kind of thinking maybe a little outside the box and maybe things like a bike share system for residents and tourists, which could even include electric assist bicycles, which can help with the terrain issues. Going to the next slide. On transit, of course, right now you've got service from Sam and TriMet. It's really kind of down that main corridor of Eagle Creek Road and Main Street. More or less with TriMet's hourly frequency, Sam's a little bit less, although TriMet does run all through the weekend. I think Sam, just runs on Saturday. So go ahead and go to the next slide. One thing we were talking about in past meetings is considering the frequency of service enough. 1 hour it's kind of a long wait for some people, though. I think I was telling the last group we met with today, the DEI community. I live in Tualatin, and I think you actually have better weekend service than I do. So it could be worse, especially for a community this size. But maybe in those commute periods, maybe there's a desire for a couple extra buses to cut the wait time down to maybe 30 minutes. Accessibility of transit stops was something that's come up a lot. Making sure that you can safely cross streets to get to them. And then when you are at them, making sure you've got a safe place to stand and you're not, right on the side of a road or near a ditch, something like that. Again, with the growth, kind of following that pattern of growth, it's going to kind of keep getting farther away from the main transit corridor. And so just that awareness that, kind of that first last mile, as it's called, access to transit, may become an issue for some of the new development. So again, it's being very aware of providing kind of direct and good connectivity for people that might need to walk or bike to that transit corridor. And then the park and rides, just some question if people are aware of where the park and ride locations are in town. And in general, kind of along those lines, maybe there's more the city could do just to kind of advertise and bring awareness to what transportation options there are available to citizens. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So I've kind of already got into solutions as I was going along there. So you can go ahead and skip that one. Kind of shifting a little bit to the driving mode. I mean, safety affects all the modes. One thing we did was we pulled the most recent 5 years of crash data from the Oregon Department of Transportation, just to see if there were any kind of patterns, trends, hot spots that we might need to address. One big caveat I'll throw out with this is obviously just pulling where crashes happened and where people reported them is only part of the picture. I've heard many times about locations in the city where there are safety concerns that actually don't show up where there was a crash. So again, we need to pair this data and what it's telling us, but we're also what we're seeing and hearing from the community to really complete the picture. Just from this data in general, kind of as you would expect, most of the crashes were happening on the higher volume, higher speed corridors with the highway and with Eagle Creek. There really weren't a lot of intersections where there was clearly a lot of repeat crashes happening. They're really kind of being spread around for the most part. Most of the crashes, when they did happen, tended to be lesser severity, so there weren't a lot of serious injuries occurring. It was mostly property damage or maybe a minor injury, which is good. Usually those are probably lower speed crashes, I'm guessing. Not a lot of crashes. There was 2 crashes involved a pedestrian and one with somebody biking, with kind of no clear pattern, at least between those 3. And one little trend, for what it's worth, is a lot of the crashes seem to be involving people making turning movements, involving a failure to stop. So they might have been stopped at a stop sign, decided to take a gap that maybe they shouldn't have, and that resulted in a crash. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So talking on the kind of the congestion side of driving. So we looked at, I think it looks at about 12 different study intersections. Where you see the blue dots, those are places we kind of picked to kind of test for congestion around the city. And our analysis is focused on the weekday PM peak hour. So it's kind of your afternoon rush hour period. And as you might know, the city and the county and ODOT all have their own standards for mobility that identify kind of what's the maximum level of congestion that we're going to say is acceptable. You've probably heard that a lot if you're dealing with development applications, because they're usually having to assess that to see if they're going to kind of trip a threshold. And so, the city and the county use what's called the level of service. It's kind of like a report card, where A is really, really good and F is really bad. I think the city's mobility standard is like at a D. So it's okay to go up to that point. ODOT uses different numbers. It's a volume to capacity ratio. The number varies, but it's usually somewhere in the 0.9 range. So which would be like 90% of the assumed capacity of an intersection is being used. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So for existing conditions, just looking at what's going on today, there's really not that much congestion if we're measuring congestion by those standards that I mentioned. Where there's more congestion or where maybe it's getting close to those standards, there was just two spots that we identified, and that was the orange dots here at the bottom at the highway and Main Street, which I know you can probably see if we watch out this window long enough at about this time, or maybe earlier than this. You can easily see 5-6 cars backed up, we're waiting to turn left out onto Main Street at around 5 o'clock or so. The other being at Highway 211 and 224 right down there where you've got the split. But other than that, nothing was really even close to those standards for congestion that have been set. Different picture in the future for sure. You want to go to the next slide. Before I get to that, just want to talk about the growth that we assumed, because I know that's probably a big issue in town with everything that you've seen. So making sure you know what we assumed. Just kind of a little, backstory. I mean, Estacada's population has already grown a fair amount since the last TSP update, which that chart there shows, back in the last TSP update was done, you were around 2,500 people, and now you're, more around 5,000. So already doubled in size since then. When we did our forecast to go out 20 years, we looked at your housing needs analysis that you just did, and your economic opportunity analysis, which is telling us, and those, I know the housing needs analysis is also going to be based on PSU's population research and estimates for your future, and looked at what that was telling us as far as how much growth are we expecting in the city over this 20-year horizon, as it's going to result in development, whether that's residential, commercial, industrial, and so on. In the next 20 years, 1,707 new households and 713 new jobs are forecasted to be added to Estacada. And that would be a population going from where it's about 5,000 today to about 8,800.
Time for one question before we move on.
Yeah.
Planning commissioner, we planning people over here. How many current proposed houses do we have on our docket here? Because last I heard it was about 1,500.
The proposed number of developments of housing units?
Yeah, how many housing units?
I don't have that in front of me. Taylor, do you have that?
I asked that question.
It's a-
Mel
it's
had
a-
1,600.
If you include the pending subdivision, which has not yet gone to the planning commission, then yes, it's closer to 1,700. And I believe that subdivision was, that subdivision was included in the data that we gave to the TSP, to DKS for this kind of future growth forecast. So, yeah, there is that
That's-
pending subdivision. So that's about 220 some that are.
Taylor, you're saying that's how many we have currently planned now, and that's whatever the next 5 years, if I recall correctly, correct?
Those are what have been permitted at the subdivision level.
Yeah, and I think the when they get permitted, that's usually what expires after like 2 or 3 years,
Yeah, it expires after
So-
4 years, actually.
4 years. So
But
so
yes,
do you-
it allows them to create the lot and then they come in for building permits. So it's not guaranteed that they'll get built out, but we can expect them mostly to.
do you see where I'm going with this, John?
Yeah. If you want to go to my next slide, I think I'm going there with you.
Okay.
Oh. There we go.
All right. So knowing you've already seen a whole lot of applications for development come in, your folks in the planning department gave us those applications, and in doing our projection, we kind of looked at how much development it was, what type, and where it was occurring. So it's kind of what all these H's with the dots are on the map. So we kind of spread those around in our analysis model. And that accounts for 1,428 housing units of the, what I say, 1,710 maybe total. It's 84% of what was projected to happen over this 20-year period. You've already got approved. Yeah, that is a key question is, does that mean the projection was too low? Or are you seeing it front loaded in the first part of the 20 years? Or what rate is it actually going to build out and get occupied? You know, a lot of those developments happen in phases. It's going to be market driven. And yeah, I don't have an answer to that, but it's certainly, yes, it does make you wonder if you've already seen 84% of it come in. Yeah, what is that going to look like really in 20 years?
Are we looking at new numbers to potentially put down there since we've already got the numbers already looking like they're gonna be wrong? Or are we gonna try to put this TSP out with numbers that we already know are questionable at best?
I don't know if I would say they're questionable at best. Again, they could still be reasonably accurate. I mean, let's be honest, anytime you're projecting out 20 years, it's going to be accurate-ish. One thing is we do have to make sure that your transportation system plan is consistent with your other planning and with your comprehensive plan. So I think we do have to be very careful about, replacing these numbers. If this is what your comprehensive plan is telling you and your housing needs analysis and your economic opportunities analysis, if you take those out of sync, there may be some risk that maybe, the LCD and ODOT wouldn't acknowledge the plan and that you may not be able to kind of actually implement and enforce it. So I said, I would say, let's wait and see what some of the outcomes and recommendations are. Maybe look at what I'd call sensitivity. So maybe if we have a certain set of recommendations, you could look at it and say, well, could this handle X amount of more growth? Fine. Or how close are these recommendations to, maybe breaking or needing something more, right? And then maybe pick the conversation up from there. Because it's possible that some of the recommendations could handle, another 5, 10 plus years of growth on top of what we're projecting.
Answer your question.
Yes and no. I'm sure I'll have more.
I'm sure it'll come to you as we go along here. Go ahead.
Go ahead, next slide. All right, so the colored dots, if you can see those, obviously with that much growth, that's going to change the picture from a congestion standpoint. So when we reevaluated that, you clearly on the highway, you're seeing a lot of red dots, right, where it's not meeting those mobility targets. And I probably want to clarify what that probably really looks like. I think once you're on the highway itself will move okay. What those red dots are really showing you is if you're trying to go across the highway from a stop sign or turn left onto it, you're probably going to experience some pretty high delay during those weekday PM peak hours. Remember, I think pretty much every one of those intersections I'm showing there today, it's got a stop sign on the side street. And I don't even know if any of them have real separate turn lanes. So remember, a lot of this future growth, it's kind of coming from and going to the north, to get to Sandy, the metro area where a lot of people are working. So those are a lot of the movements where you're going to see a lot of growth. In some cases, just simply adding a right turn lane on one of those side streets might help tremendously. So if I want to turn right, I'm not stuck behind, the one person that wants to turn left. So we'll look into that more when we get there, but I think that's largely the nature of what you're seeing with those red dots on the highway. What conversation we did have with the stakeholder group is, it does seem likely that you may need a traffic signal or two, or maybe a roundabout. We consider both, but some higher form of traffic control. But we are going to need to be kind of strategic in thinking about where that would go. For one, they're expensive, right? So you're only going to be able to pay for so many. The other is it's unlikely ODOT would approve a whole bunch of, say, new signals or roundabouts. They're going to want kind of more strategic spacing. And then, of course, we want to think about kind of where's the centroid of the growth and where does it want to come from and go to? And can we find a location that benefits both sides of the highway? While there's still obviously work to be done there, a conversation we had with the stakeholder group was that, River Mill might be a good spot because it seems to be kind of centrally located where it might serve the most people. And then also it sounds like there is a future connection of, somebody help me with the map. Is it Century? It's in the industrial park, parallels the highway.
Campus Drive.
What was that?
Campus Drive.
Campus.
Campus.
Thank you. Taylor, maybe you can tell them the status of that. My understanding is you said that may be extended down.
Yeah, it's actually getting extended as we speak. So if you well, yeah,
Perfect.
if you go out there, you can see where they've started working on it.
Perfect. So with that connection now, River Mill can serve the industrial park as well as a lot of the residential growth on the other side. So more conversation to be had there, but that was kind of something to think about. Eagle Creek, of course, too, right? It's another kind of major north-south route, especially with kind of limited connectivity to get north and south from a lot of that new development. That's going to take a lot of that pressure too. So again, maybe what types of key intersection treatments are needed, and also what can we do just to improve connectivity to kind of spread the load out better, probably things we need to look at. And then I think what other congested intersections, yeah, you can see Eagle Creek and River Mill, and then 6th and Broadway, we're getting pretty congested. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And I've already talked about most of those solutions as I was going, so you can go ahead and go to the next one. And I've probably talked about most of these too. So this was just some of the stuff that we've heard from the stakeholder group we met with on the 29th. And I think I peppered in a lot of that as I was going on. I will mention, so it's talking about safety improvements, right, that don't necessarily show up on the crash map. 2 areas which I've heard a lot of over the years that came up again were certainly, Cemetery and Coupland. I just concerned about being able to turn out of Cemetery Road safely. And then 6th, along with, between the schools, especially when there's buses parking or game days and there's a lot of people parked there. And then kids are trying to cross the street at the same time. So a lot of places like that have continued to come up. Another interesting one we heard was from Fire right over here, trying to get on the highway at Curran for non-emergencies. They're experiencing a lot of delay trying to get out. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide because I probably hit most of those.
Joel has a question for you.
Yeah.
Regarding the fire department turnouts there, I did some research on that since the previous conversation on there. And one of the things I was looking at recommending either on our own Main Street here, or if we can put it across the highway is, you ever seen fire signals when you're coming in streets, is when they need to get out, they can trigger a fire signal that allows them to stop people or, put a red blinking light up or something that catches their attention so they can pull out and proceed from there. So that was gonna be a recommendation I was gonna make for either our Main Street or during this time. Which takes me to a second part, Mayor.
As long as it pertains to what he's talking about.
It's along the lines there, which is evacuation routes. I see it's mentioned in here, but it's not talked about in anything we presented so far. How are we looking at for evacuation routes when we're evaluating traffic and stuff? Because during our fire evacuations, we had, was it 4 hours to get out of the area here? Something like that? It was pretty bad. So in case there was the fire was on the door, it would not have been a pretty sight, people trying to evacuate out of here. So something to consider too is ease of egress when it comes down to getting people out of the city in case of an emergency. And we've had 2 wildfire scares in 2 years, so.
Yeah, and on that one, we haven't gotten too far into that, other than knowing it's an important issue that we have to address, because I think we're kind of saving our ammunition until we get to that next phase of really getting into the solutions, but we're gonna have to have a lot more conversation about that one.
Excellent, thank you.
So again, I think the questions that were posed to you, if you've got any more direction for us, is just kind of thinking through that. And if there were any other issues you wanted to make sure that we weren't missing, or types of projects you'd like to see us considered, as we move to that next phase. I'll even throw another one on there back to the community outreach. If it's come to you over the last 30 minutes, if there's another stakeholder group you want to make sure that we reach out to, now would be a great time to hear that.
Okay, well. Joel,
Who's your stakeholders when it comes down to disability?
Let me look at the list. I
We've
think
got
Terrell
the
was, oh, go ahead, Terrell.
Community sent a couple of, well, the official representative is, we've got one spot for a community center representative, and they've been speaking to disability issues a lot. We also did some targeted interviews with some folks with different kinds of disabilities.
Excellent.
Yeah, we spoke with Terrell and Tony Longdrew, and I believe one other person, Crystal. But yeah, we're continuing to look out.
Excellent. So you're getting targeted one. That's great.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
And we're also, we're open to more suggestions for stakeholders to interview. Sorry if I'm repeating what maybe John just said, but yeah, so if there are stakeholders that are not represented on our stakeholder group, or just individuals that residents or people who work in Estacada that are familiar with some particular issues, feel free to connect them with one of the planning staff, and we'd love to talk to them.
Hey, Taylor, maybe we could hit up our elderly facilities as well and hold a meeting in their facility so that we could get their input. I think that's a big one here, and I think they're getting missed.
Yeah,
Maybe.
Great idea.
Yeah.
there was a suggestion today at the DEI
Okay.
committee meeting
Good.
to involve the facility, the Oddfellows facility up on, I believe it's behind Teen Challenge, I think.
Yeah. Oh,
On,
yeah.
I think 6th and,
Whispering
Six and Wade.
Pines is that when you're talking about?
I'm
yeah,
not
West
sure what
Spring
it
Pines
called-
is the
Yeah.
retirement home up there.
That's the one? Okay.
Yeah, there's also 300 Main over here.
Good, good. So they're already
Great.
working on that.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Great.
Right. That's great. Like,
Have you guys done any outreach with the schools to reach out? I heard him mention the outreach to Ant Farm, but with the kids that are walking and biking to and from school every day, I think that'd be, maybe get a hold of the superintendent or the principals there to communicate directly with some of the students about the challenges they're facing, just getting to
Yeah.
and from school. would be good.
Yeah, so Sarah Lawson is on the stakeholder group. Sarah Lawson, she works for the district. I'm not sure what her title is.
She's
but,
the transportation coordinator for the district.
oh, right, okay.
And we've tried to set up some engagement activities with students. It's been understandably really hard to schedule that just with the school calendar. If any of you have personal connections with folks in the schools, either teachers or other people that could help us set something up, we would definitely love to do another engagement activity with youth in some of the schools, or after school or something like that.
I'd be willing to try to help with that.
Awesome. And I should add, we also, I apologize if I'm repeating something Alan said, but we have distributed and will continue distributing the project flyers, which have the QR code for the youth survey. We'll keep distributing those through the schools, and we have already gotten a few survey responses from youths, so that's good too.
good, Charity. You have something?
I just wanted to say that it's already been mentioned, and it's been mentioned to me by some students and some teachers, but you're on the right track with the schools. That area, that 6th area, just even trying to make a left turn or trying to turn into the high school is a total nightmare. But I think as you dig further, you might find like more little nuggets. And so, but I think you're on the right track. That's a huge one, that 6th Avenue. So, yeah.
Okay. Paul, you want to weigh in on this, or Jerry? I don't always see your hands up.
Sure. I kind of am a little bit bigger. I've been on stakeholder meetings.
Hold on just a minute, Paul. We're not getting your mic.
Yeah, you sound like a
Distorted.
robot.
Try it again. No, this mic isn't.
No.
No, it's not coming in.
Okay. All
We
right.
lost it.
Yeah, I'd say it's his computer.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Paul. They say it might be on your side, your computer. I'm not sure. All right, Jerry, did you want to weigh in on that? No? Okay. Joel?
This question, have you spoke to any of the trucking companies in the area or anything? Because we have a lot of larger rigs that come through for delivery. We have big equipment, school bus, things like that. School buses will probably covered by the school transportation, but anything the larger, get their take on how our flow is maybe and how we can improve that. Because they do have to bring trucks and tractors and stuff through the city. So.
Yeah, that's great input too. I'm not sure we've got contact information for any of the trucking companies, but we do have on our list of stakeholder interviews, a couple of the business owners in the industrial park. And so we will be asking some targeted questions around the bigger vehicles and machinery that they use. But yeah, once again, if you've got some specific suggestions or contacts for us, please send them our way.
Okay, great. Thank you. Taylor.
I know on that note, you also have some trucks that need to circulate through downtown, wouldn't go to the industrial park. Do you have a good idea maybe who to talk to in the grocery store or?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the immediate traffic that we're seeing, deliveries to the grocery store, deliveries to the restaurants and bar facilities and stuff like that are larger than most, and they come in and making sure that we can accommodate them on our traffic plan.
It might also, any of the excavation companies in the area, they have to call tractors and stuff. You can probably look at a phone book and pick up 5 or 10 in the area. And logging companies too. There's several of those right in our area and they come through town sometimes. So.
Jerry.
Dan Backwell would be the contact of Thriftway if that's the question you were asking, or Harvest Market. I'm not sure who the person would be at Dollar General, but Dan Backwell is the contact at Thriftway.
Great, thank you, Jerry. Okay, I think that's all the questions we have out here on that. Do you have anything else for us tonight?
I do not. Thanks for having me again. And I'll say your team here at City Hall is doing a fantastic job. And I hope to see you on the 25th at the community workshop.
We're good, thank you. And Taylor, do you have anything else you want to add in there?
I don't, but we'll be pushing out some reminders for that community workshop, and we do have a flyer that we can send out if you haven't received it already, and y'all can help us spread the word. And yeah, it's always ideal if counselors and committee members can attend these things and help us talk to the public about what's going on and get their input.
Well, we want to thank the team. You're doing a great job. We appreciate you keeping us enlightened. Where's the hand? Oh, on Jerry? Jerry, your hand thing is up? Do you have it?
No, I think
That's
that's
actually. it might be
Melanie.
me.
Oh, Melanie,
Melanie,
okay.
Melanie.
There you go, Melanie.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted, I'll lower my hand. Okay. I just wanted to say thank you to you all for taking this project on, because when we start on a project, like to update a plan, and it's gonna take more than a year to get it done. It always like, yes, we should do this. This is something we need to do. We ought to do, and all those words should and ought and all this stuff. We work our way through it. Everybody works really hard. The staff works hard. You guys work hard reaching out to public and getting input. And then we get to the end, and it's always challenging at the end because it's been such a long process. And B, when you get right down to it, it's like, we can't see the future. And so we don't want to make decisions that are going to be like, well, we didn't intend that to come out of this, or we chose this particular way to change the code, and it could turn out good, or it could turn out like, well, we weren't intending that. And so there's always this uncertainty when we get to the end of a plan. And that I think is the hardest part, because then you're putting your stamp of approval on it. And like you guys are saying, we can't see the future. It looks like all the housing that they're saying in the next 20 years is already slated to be built probably in the next 5 years. And is that really going to happen? Is it going to spread it out over the next 10 years? But I just wanted to say thank you for taking this on. We'll keep on working on it. And we'll do the best we can. And we might be back at it again in 5, 6, 7 more years, because just depending on the rate of growth and how fast we need to do it. But we're going to try our best to plan for that 20 years. And I know you guys are taking on the hard work of thinking ahead and what our community should look like in 20 years from now. And so just wanted to put that out there, because I know it's not an easy job.
Well, thank you, Melanie. We appreciate that. And we appreciate the extra comments. That's real helpful. We are growing. We all know that. And it changes daily. So we appreciate you. And if you need some chicken soup, Melanie, I'd be glad to bring it over to you. You sound like you're sick.
Oh man, chicken soup sounds pretty good right now, but
Yeah.
that's all right. Thank you though.
All right. Thank you. Well, we have about I'd say 10 minutes. So if you wish to go to the bathroom or take a break or fill out one of the questionnaires back there and make sure our staff has those up here to give to me, I'd greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you in 10 minutes. So thank you. Workshop adjourned.